The House Local Government and Municipal Finance Committee will come to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take the attendance?
Chair Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Representatives Burns. Here. Shannon.
Yes.
Green.
Present.
Rogers. Here. Hill.
Here.
Hoskins.
Here.
Pies.
Present.
Zorn.
Here.
Paquette.
Here.
Bazat.
Here.
Bagol.
Here.
Preston. Mr. Chair, you have 12 members. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Next, I need a motion from a member to approve and adopt the minutes from November 13th, our last meeting. Representative Hill makes that motion. Seeing no objection, the minutes stand approved. With that, today we will be taking up in this special convening of local government and House Municipal Finance is Representative Farhat's bill, House Bill 6088. And this legislation will remove the transportation millage opt-out for communities in a county with a population of 1.5 million or more. Representative Farhat, whenever you are ready, you may proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee, for making time for this very important matter today. Before you is legislation that will simply end the opt-outs in Wayne County. We know that in the economic climate we're in today, we're in a constant competition for talent, for people, for investment. And one of the big things folks are looking for is the ability to get from point A to B as fast, as safely, and as reliably as possible. And the legislation before us today will empower the voters of Wayne County to choose collectively to invest in a transit system that can take them from point to point. And now, for folks that are wondering, well, what's the problem? And I'll tell you. This is informed by one of my favorite things to do is my senior coffee hours. And I was at a senior home in Dearborn. And when a lady comes to me and says, Representative, I struggle to make it to my doctor's appointments. My daughter has to take off work to take me to my doctor in Canton. It's not always easy. I wish there was a way for me to do this. Now, at the time, Safe, who's right behind me, he's working for SMART, which was the transit authority in Wayne County. I called Safe and I said, Safe, there's got to be a solution here. He's like, yeah, we have Smart Flex. We have these buses. We can go pick them up, take them to go. But he's like, it just depends on where they're going. I said, what do you mean? He's like, well, Canton's an opt-out community. I said, are you serious? He said, yeah, they're an opt-out community. So you can't go from Dearborn to Canton. The bus won't stop and the Smart Flex won't stop. And that's a real problem for us here in Wayne County when 17 communities, we have 43 communities in Wayne County, 17 of them are opted out. And so that creates real problems for residents who are trying to reliably plan for their doctor's visits, for their job interviews, who are trying to plan around their life and their work schedules. So what we're asking this committee and the legislature to do here is to enable the county to put forward a proposal in front of its voters and all of its voters in the county that they can invest in and that they all can be a part of. This legislation was very intentionally crafted to only focus on Wayne County because we didn't want any unintended consequences of impacting other transit authorities that are operating within the state. Now, behind me are experts that helped craft this, folks from the transit community, and folks who have lived experiences that I, with the chair's permission, would love for you folks to hear from.
Thank you very much, Representative. Yes, I think we'll wait and hold questions until the end. I'd love to have this next set of testimony come and be a part of that before we have questions. So I do have here wishing to testify Assad Turfi. I'm so sorry, I always mess this up. Is it Turf or Turfe?
Turfy.
Turfy, okay. Apologies. Deputy Wayne County CEO, and also Megan Owens, Transportation Riders United. Brad Williams and Adam Majestic with the Detroit Chamber of Commerce as well. If you'd like to come up all at once, I think that's fine. That way we can kind of move through the testimony that you have provided. All right. And Mr. Turfy, you're welcome to begin.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, committee members. Thank you for having us here today. We are here in support of House Bill 6088. My name is Assad Turfy, Deputy County Executive for Wayne County. Wayne County, largest county in the state of Michigan. County Executive Warren Evans could not be here today, but he sent myself and the rest of the team in full support of this bill, of Rep. Farhat's bill. I joined my career in Wayne County 22 years ago. I started off as a Wayne County Sheriff's Deputy, and I worked my way through the ranks. 22 years, 9 promotions. I've been all across the county. I seen firsthand the impact of not having a good transit system and not having transit at all for people to use their buses to get from point A to point B. It has some serious impact on the entire county. Currently, we use Public Act 196 every 4 years. We created the Wayne County Transit Authority, and we use the Wayne County Transit Authority to levy the smart millage, which in Wayne County, we use the smart millage. The problem is it allows for communities to opt out, and voters never get a chance to decide their fate on what transit should look like. What we would like, we're in full support of this bill to give the power to the people to do for Wayne County what Oakland and Macomb has done for themselves, and that is have an entire county that has main bus lines on all their main routes. And this is important. And as we look at transit and the way transit is evolving, these main bus lines are almost like the macro level, the main bus lines. And it will create a space that down the road that we could look at it from a micro level as well, right, with the rideshare program. Representative Farhat mentioned the Flex program in Dearborn that allows, the short bus rides to the main bus line. This is something that's very impactful. And other communities have elected to have, routes for seniors that this could be complementary to what's going on at the local level. I think it's important to have a county that has full access. It benefits students going to their community colleges, to their schools. Livonia is currently an opt-out community that has one of our big community colleges, Schoolcraft. It allows employers to have the ability for their employees to show up to work. Also, it allows the ability for seniors to get around and those that have disabilities. And some people, just in today's climate, don't want to own a car for whatever reason. This will allow the ability to get from point A to point B and to allow a county to be able to work for everyone. We're here in support. I'm happy to answer any questions to give some clarity. So turn over the mic.
Thank you. Ms. Owens.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity, Chair, members. My name is Megan Owens. I'm the Director of Transportation Riders United. We are a public transit advocacy organization. For nearly 25 years, we have worked throughout Southeast Michigan to make sure everyone is able to get where they need to go regardless of whether they drive. We believe even in the Motor City, where we love our cars, driving shouldn't determine your destiny in life. And I've spoken to way too many people over the years who maybe one woman, Kristen, is in a wheelchair, had a wheelchair enabled vehicle, was going to college, and then her vehicle broke down, and it was going to be $60,000 to replace it. She had to drop out of college because there was no other option for a person in a wheelchair to get to her school. There are seniors who have lived their entire lives in a community that they love, and then they hear from their doctor, like my stepfather recently did, you can't be driving anymore, you're not safe. But they still want to live active, robust lives. Which part of the county they live in, whether they live on one side of a city or township border or not, should not be the deciding factor as to whether they have the mobility to get where they need to go, to get a ride to school, to get a ride to the doctor. Even employers, it's critically important for so many businesses. I did hear anecdotally, and I can't necessarily say who, but from a major employer in the west side of Wayne County who moved in, were a month away from opening, and reached out to SMART and said, okay, let's talk about adjusting the bus routes and making sure. And they, wait, what do you mean there's no public transit service? How can we be in a major metropolitan area in the biggest county in the state and there's no buses to get our residents, to get workers? And so they had to go through extraordinary efforts to set up all sorts of shuttles and stuff. So in a major county like Wayne County, public transit should be an essential service. You wouldn't want to have a community, a county that didn't have parks or schools or libraries or fire department. Public transportation is similarly an essential service, and we greatly encourage you to support this bill to allow all of Wayne County to vote as a whole whether or not they want to invest in transit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Owens. Now, I had Mr. Williams here for a moment on the screen. I think that he may be here, that if you would like to add anything else to the committee record. Mr. Williams, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Brad Williams from the Detroit Regional Chamber, and I appreciate your time and the committee's time. I just wanted to add some perspective from the business community and just let you know, the Detroit Regional Chamber is not a new face to this question about transit. We've been around since 1903, and if you look at some of the very first issues of our Detroiter magazine from 1903, you'll see the chamber calling for improvements to Detroit's streetcar system. And of course, we've been without streetcars in Detroit for decades, but our advocacy for mobility options for Detroiters hasn't waned since that point. And it's really simple as to why we want to invest in mobility options, not just for Detroiters, but for individuals throughout the region. Business can only succeed when we can get our products to market, but more importantly for this conversation, when we can get workers and customers in the door. We have had for too long a patchwork of transit services throughout our region. And thankfully, we have had for a number of years Macomb County with a countywide millage, and just recently, Oakland County walked into the 21st century by passing their own countywide millage. Bringing Wayne County into the fold will only improve our regional transit services. Certainly, this isn't the silver bullet like we had hoped to pass in 2016 when we saw a region-wide transit millage fall short by just a few thousand votes. But I will note that in 2016, Wayne County was the highest vote turnout in favor of the regional transit millage. And so I think as policymakers are making their determinations as to whether or not this is a good solution for Wayne County, they should note that Wayne County voters, while it was 8 years ago, have spoken overwhelmingly that they do support transit. They do support more transit options. And so not only will this be good for business, Wayne County voters have expressed their support for it in the past. I'm happy to take any questions you might have, but I just want to emphasize that on behalf of employers throughout the Detroit region, we're supportive of improving our network and letting Wayne County to be part of a fully integrated transit system.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Representative Farhat, if you wouldn't mind coming forward just to be prepared for any questions from the membership. But I think that really at the core of this is really recognizing that there is an interdependency upon the communities within a county to make sure that we do have the promotion of health, safety, well-being, economic, and making sure that there are no cut down on the disparities between groups and communities that may rely on amenities like a transit system or parks or otherwise. And this is a great example of that here in House Bill 6088. With that, I do have a couple of questions from members. First, Representative Bagol.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you could just clarify, I don't want to jump to the conclusions. I want to make sure I understand what you're attempting to do here. So you have 17 municipalities that have opted out of the transit system. At least their governmental bodies have said that they don't want to participate. And you want there to be a vote of the people to find out if they want the transit system to go into those jurisdictions. Are you suggesting that these will be individual elections within the jurisdictions that have opted out, or are you talking collectively the entire county vote on it? Because we all know if that's the case, I mean, a majority of the population is gonna vote on this, maybe from Detroit or whoever else participates, and this will essentially be forced on these smaller communities? Is that?
So what I'll say to that, first of all, Sheriff, thank you for the question. Or I still call you Sheriff, Representative. But thank you for the question. I think what's important to note here is that when we talk about transit and accessibility, if you're that business owner in a smaller community in Wayne County who specializes in, artisan goods, or if you're a downtown area that struggles to thrive, or if you're on the waterfront of Wayne County has a decent waterfront area, right? You want to be able to have folks that come to you. So in essence, this legislation, right now, as it stands, when the millage is renewed, right, we cannot levy this on the voters without them voting on it. It's a very important distinction there. So what this legislation will do is it'll remove the option to opt out, and it'll make it a county-wide vote of the population. And I will say, right, there have been folks organized behind millages in Wayne County all the time. Voters are very educated on this issue. Trust me, in Dearborn, we have shot down the last 5 millages, right? Even for certain things like schools, right? So we are a very educated voter population in Wayne County. We'll make these decisions as a whole, as a group, as a county. But the ultimate public benefit is there. It's that we're connecting, again, our seniors to their medical providers. We're connecting young folks to, amenities in downtown areas, in midtown areas, and, places that they otherwise won't be able to access. The Livonia Schoolcraft is a large college, actually. It's a very large college that also houses, a lot of disciplinary schools within it, right? And so what we're doing here is we're just allowing our county to be interconnected and allowing voters, they can decide. It is a vote of the majority, but they can decide and they can make their voices heard at the ballot box.
And I think that recognizing your answer here too, Representative, is the understanding that workforce flow, right? Like we heard from the chamber here, recognizing that in Dearborn, you may have people come from outside of the municipality to come in using that transit system, and vice versa as well, that you may have a small subset of the population, 5%, who do rely on that for transportation for employment. But that is all the interdependency, as I mentioned, within the county, and thus that viewpoint, I think, is really valid here. So, Representative Paquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the testimony. I'm on the west side, so I'm a little bit far removed from this issue, but I've been hearing about it, from the state side for the last 6 years now here, in certain attempts to address transit. And so, as you mentioned, that localities, municipalities are very educated on this issue. What are, when they choose to opt out, these 17 municipalities, what are their arguments, specific arguments to opt out?
Great question. And I think it's important that you brought that up because we want to look at things in the context as they are, right? So when these municipalities made these decisions, it was very early on when the legislation was first passed in the 80s, right? We have mayors and supervisors now that we've talked to that have said, we want this. It's going to be a very, at a local level, things may often get very messy. We want this. We want the ability to flourish as a city. Again, Livonia is the third largest city in Wayne County. They have a school. They have great employers. They want to be able to step into the rest of the kind of economic activity that's going on elsewhere and be able to participate with a good transit system. We saw the NFL draft, for example, where people had to stay 30, 40 minutes away from downtown Detroit just to go to the draft. To be able to take a transit line, right, is really important. So yes, these localities are educated, and yes, many of them are on board with this move that we're doing. I think it's noted in the lack of opposition that folks have brought up forward here today.
Thank you. Representative Burns.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rep. Farhat, and our guests for being here today and testifying on this bill. I appreciate it. My question is, if this moves forward and if this were to be approved and go through, roughly how long would it take to get an expanded system up and running? What are we looking at in terms of timeline?
Yeah, so for timeline, if we are successful and able to get this bill passed, we're going to spend all 2025 working with our 43 communities and our transit entities in the county to find out what makes sense for each individual community. Because we don't just want to pass a law on a system, we want a system that actually works for its people. And, to piggyback on something that Representative Farhat mentioned, there is some small communities in Wayne County that are at a disadvantage for getting their employees to work. And there was a time where people lived near their jobs. That's no longer the case. People are commuting now. And not every individual these days wants to own a car or can't afford to own a car. And this allows the ability for people to have that access. And I think that's, Mark to make is this is going to create access for individuals that don't necessarily have it. And yes, 17 communities currently in Wayne County are opted out of this. And over 500,000 residents don't have any transit system currently in Wayne County.
So we have two final questions. Representative Pies. 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I went with others on a smart ride. I don't recall what city to what city, but I remember we got off at one end point because that's where the buses stopped, and that there were a lot of retail there on one side and then restaurants on the other side. I recall we had to walk over a mile to get to the one restaurant. My concern had been when we were walking that the sidewalks were very small, and that made me think of people with disabilities and wheelchairs and how they would be able to get through for business or for work. So I'm wondering if off the top of your head you might have an idea of how many people with disabilities of one sort or another that this transportation might help?
You know, I don't have those exact figures, but I do know this. When I spoke to the mayor of Livonia, she did indicate to me that was a large response from her community, that individuals with disabilities, this will provide access for them. And it was a real big selling point. I don't have those exact figures. I don't know if Megan does.
I don't know. I don't have those figures offhand, but I can say right now, people are still trying to get to those jobs and those appointments and are walking down or in their wheelchairs rolling down the side of the road in sometimes unsafe situations. One of the important components of a public transit system are the door-to-door rides for seniors and people with disabilities, so they don't have to go nearly so far. Hopefully the cities will continue to improve on their pedestrian infrastructure. But
Yeah, I recall there was like a little bridge we had to go over to. I'm sorry, can you remind me what cities?
Yeah,
those were?
so just to kind of refresh, about 3 months ago, we invited the local Wayne County representatives, and we started over at the Meyer in Southgate, which is an opt-in community. And we were going to Woodhaven, which is a neighboring community. We traveled through Riverview, which is an opt-in community, and then when we got to the Woodhaven city limits, we had to get off the bus because the bus doesn't go any further. And, you know, imagine if you were an employee or somebody going to do some shopping. We picked a short route to make it convenient on everyone, and it was about a mile walk. But if we would have picked a destination like in Canton Township, which got over 100,000 residents, as an opt-out community, we would have to probably walk at some instances maybe 8 miles. And
I recall it was in the 90s that day because some of us.
Yes, it was a hot day.
thought
We actually had
might not
people
do it.
halfway through passing out water, and that doesn't normally happen in a normal situation. But we tried to make it as convenient as possible. We also wanted to give the transit experience in Wayne County, and it creates situations where people have to get off their bus and do some walking until they could get to another bus line in another community.
So we have two final questions, and I would like to, we are doing our absolute best to keep questions and answers probably as concise as possible at this point, but please be thorough in your answers, concise though. So with that, Representative Bazat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your coming in and testifying. I appreciate it. I understand your concerns here, but and I'm just learning about this, so forgive me for if I'm redundant here, but you get 17 communities that have opted out, and they all have communities that they all have elected officials in these communities that have made these choices, right, for their residents. I'm correct there, correct?
I'll have our partners at the county speak to that.
Yeah, so some communities have opted out, some communities just never opted in.
Okay.
And the prior legislation just wasn't clear, and many of them have never been in since the beginning. I think one of the communities that I'm aware of, like Livonia, at one point was in, and then at some point in the early 2000s decided that they want out. But yes, it's the officials are making the call and not the residents, and we want to be able to go do the same thing that Oakland and Macomb have done.
Well, Oakland's not to the threshold population-wise, right?
You know, so Oakland is all in the way in transit.
Okay.
So is Macomb County. They use a different mechanism to levy their millage, and I could get into why we are doing it this route in Wayne County. But that is a question that comes up, is how come Wayne County didn't do the same process that Oakland and Macomb did? And the reason is each county has a general taxing authority that the county could levy, and there's a cap on that of 10 mills. Currently in Wayne County, we are at 7.7 mills. If we were to levy another mill on our general taxing authority, it puts us at 8.7, which essentially get us closer to our cap. We believe that is bad government. 30, 40, 50 years from now, whoever is trying to manage and run the county, it essentially puts them in a tough position. You always want to keep that cap space available. That's why we elect at Wayne County to use Public Act 196 and run it through an authority and not our general taxing millage. Now, Macomb and Oakland, they run it through their general taxing authority because they have lower mills.
Okay.
Thank
Just one final thought, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, if I may. It's you know, you're taking away local control. There's a financial impact for these communities. I mean, we just learned about this in the last hour. Really, I've looked at it, but you're taking the voting rights away from the people that made these decisions for these communities. So I think that's going to be a huge issue. And I'm wondering why these communities, I looked at the stakeholders, there's no support or opposed. Are these communities, these 17 communities, are they in favor of this, that's opted out of this?
What I'll say, and I'll, before I hand it back to the Deputy County Executive, is two things. One, to your point, I think, in fact, we're empowering a direct democracy here. We're going straight to the voters. Whereas now there may be a buffer in that their elected folks are in the middle of it. We're going straight to the voters. So we're empowering them. It's a yes or no for them, right? I think I'll say that. And I think secondly, I'll have Deputy County Executive Turfy here speak to the local support. But I can tell you in my conversations, the communities that have either opted out or not opted in, they want this. They are very supportive of this legislation. I can say that. Yeah. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you. And finally, Representative Rogers.
Thank you. I have a question for probably Wayne County. So can you walk us through when you started thinking about this concern of the opt-outs? Could you walk us through a little bit of a timeline?
Yeah, so it was mentioned prior that in 2016, we tried to do a regional transit authority, which failed. We tried again in 2020 to place it on the ballot and never even got to that point. It's been tried several times, and every time it's been tried, I always say there's a lot of wisdom and simplicity. And in the prior times, it just got so complicated with so many ideas between fixed cars and rail and other means of transportation. It just got too confusing for the voter. So the way we're looking at it now is we're just trying to do the same thing Macomb and Oakland County did, and following that model because it worked in both those counties. We want to do the same thing in Wayne. The difference is we tax it differently through an authority because of our general taxing mills. We're closer to the cap. So that's why we're amending we've worked with Representative Farhat to help work in amending this law and to create a new bill here.
And approximately how long have you been working with Representative Farhat?
So we started talking about this a year ago. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I am supportive of transit. I am supportive of this bill. I am extremely frustrated with this process. I am extremely frustrated to be called into committee today. It's been a hard day. I will be supporting this bill, but I don't appreciate the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I think we're all set with testimony and questions. I do have some cards to read in here. Not wishing to speak in support of the bill, Todd Tennis with the Amalgamated Transit Union, Michigan Legislative Conference. Aaron Squeo with UFCW 876. Ben Stupka with RTA, not wishing to speak in, these are all in support, apologies. Not wishing to speak in support of the bill, Ross Gavin with the Michigan Environmental Council. And so we thank you very much for your testimony. You can be dismissed from the front here. With that, I need a motion to report House Bill 6088 with recommendation. That motion is made by Representative Burns, Vice Chair Burns. Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Chair Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Representatives Burns,
Yes.
Shannon,
Yes.
Breen,
Aye.
Rogers,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Hoskins,
Yes.
Pies,
Yes.
Zorn,
Yes.
Paquette,
No.
Bizat,
No.
McGold,
No.
Preston. Mr. Chair, you have 8 yeas, 3 nays, 1 pass. House Bill 6088 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you very much. With that, with no further business before the committee, this committee will stand adjourned.